Hello again, everybody. This is Derek, and I'm coming back at you with another Wargaming and miniature video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about my O Group project update. I'm currently working on a 15mm World War II project, specifically for the rules O Group. If you haven't played or seen the rules of O Group, you should really check them out. I think they're a very elegant set of rules. When I'm talking about elegance, I'm talking about how they flow really well. They are not complicated at all, and they have just enough detail to make your decisions impactful. So they have a mechanic of combat patrols, which I really love that idea. Basically, it's just a beautiful set of rules all the way around. Are there other rules out there that are more detailed? Yes. Are there other rules out there that are more comprehensive and have like every unit imaginable in the war? Yes. Are there other rules out there that are even faster playing than O Group? Yes. But I think that O Group has a really good level of detail. It's not overly complicated, but it's not super, but it's comprehensive enough to really give. It has a rich. It's good. Do I think it needs more? Yes. I think they need to really come out with that airborne book ASAP. They need to come out with more than just infantry battalions. I think they need to have things like engineer battalions or Volksgrenadier battalions, or even as simple as a tank battalion. You know, I think you can take the rules as they are, and with a little bit of finagling and a little bit of ingenuity, you can pretty much do all that yourself. But I would just like it to be official. You know, I just like that. Okay, so let's talk about my project update. Well, first of all, I ordered these rules not too long ago. I'm a noob. I haven't even read the rules from cover to cover, so I'm not the judge. But when I ordered it as a bundle. I ordered it as the rules plus the PDF. So I got the PDF immediately, and that's what I've been reading for the last couple of weeks. And then just recently I got the rules in. Now the rules, which they're out of range, but the rules came with the quick reference sheets, and the quick reference sheets are laminated. So yeah, it's great. Now you can always photocopy them and create some more or whatever, but you really don't even need them because, well, maybe you do, but there's not a whole lot of modifiers. But by getting the PDF, I did a couple of things. Well, first of all, I got it immediately, but I also can print out just the last 2 pages, which is the sheets. And when I eventually do the boot camp, which I anticipate doing relatively soon, when I do the boot camp, I'm going to be able to use screenshots of the charts from the rule book. So I anticipate that. Yeah, so I highly recommend O Group. I'm surprised it's taken me this long. It's been out a couple of years now, and I kind of disregarded it because I thought it had something to do with the Russians and only the Russians. The Eastern Front is what I thought it was, and I'm not a big fan of the Eastern Front. But it's not. It's all encompassing. It's everything. It's British, it's Americans, it's Germans, it's Russians. You could technically do Italians or Polish or Hungarian or whatever you want to do. They have 3 supplements, I think. I think they've got the Barbarossa, or the Russian Eastern Front. I think they have the early war, like France 40 supplement, and they have the Normandy book. Now, I fully anticipated having the airborne units in the Normandy book, but no, they just reprinted the German Army list and the American Army list and the British Army list. They're exactly the same. So I'm kind of disappointed with that. But they added some scenarios and some new special rules, and those books are really unnecessary, I think. Or the one, at least the Normandy book. I don't have the other 2. So I got mixed feelings about the supplement books, but they really need to work on maybe some Army list books, or some not to make it a tournament game, or when I say competitive game, I'm talking about I'll bring my army list, you bring your army list, and we'll play. Not to do that, right? But to make it more inclusive and give new players or people that haven't done any of the research information on like what some of these other battalions should look like. I know I can just and it gives permission. It's which it says use the actual army lists or use the army list from the book. So but sometimes you're not, because it's an abstract game, you're not really sure if you should have 3 squads or 2 squads, or if you should have a machine gun or not a machine gun, or a mortar or not a mortar. So it's kind of, I guess you could do it however you want to do it. But they give you just enough army lists that you can get a good idea of how it's supposed to be done. I personally think it's great. It gives you a lot of leeway and flexibility, and I'm not playing competitively. I'm playing historically. So I don't care about the point values. I care about what was actually at the battle. I'm going to try to figure out an actual scenario, like an actual battle, not a make-believe scenario, but an actual battle that took place, find out what units were actually there, and then make my forces on the table equate to that. So in that case, O Group functions perfectly for that. And that's the way I like to play anyway. Now, it's a battalion-sized game, so you basically, each player should be controlling a battalion of troops. But you don't have to do it that way. If I wanted to, I could have 3 friends or 2 friends come over, and then per side, we could have like 3 players per side. We could have a battalion on each side, and then each player playing a company. The problem with that is the order system and how you allocate orders. It's supposed to come from a battalion headquarters, so each, I don't know, maybe you can have very small, or you can just give each player company orders or something. I'm not sure. But yeah, I think it scales really well. I mean, I like it. You can have more than just your normal battalion on the table if you've got multiple players. You could actually have 2 or 3 battalions, but at that point, you're gonna need a very large table, and you're gonna maybe need not a referee, but maybe a rules lawyer that can help adjudicate, like in a convention. Okay. So let's talk about the project. I'm sorry, I got off on the rules. But I just did receive the rules, so I'm excited about that, the hard covers. But what am I working on, and what have I finished? Well, I took my field battalion. If you remember, I made a Luftwaffe field battalion in the last video. I think I showed it off. I was gonna pull the figures out and show it off again today, but I don't think I'm gonna do that. I think I'm gonna hold off on that and maybe make a separate video on that. But what I did was I converted them from a field battalion to a grenadier battalion, and that was mainly because I made a mistake. I don't claim to know everything there is to know about World War II. And when I was reading about the battles behind the beaches where the airborne troops, because I focus on the airborne, where the battles like around St. Mary-Glees and Carentan and all that, there the American paratroopers were fighting the 91st Air Landing Division, and I just assumed, and that was where the problem was, I assumed it was one of the Luftwaffe divisions because it was called Air Landing. But no, in reality, it was a Heer Grenadier Battalion, but their equipment was light. Like they didn't have any heavy equipment so that they could be carried by planes from point A to point B and dropped off and conduct battles. Not that they were ever carried anywhere, but they were designed to be carried. And so they were kind of like an air assault battalion in modern U.S. Army. It's not an airborne battalion or a division. It's it's meant to be carried by airplanes and helicopters. And so this air landing division, the 91st, I assumed was a Luftwaffe division, and I thought their battalions were field battalions, when in fact they were not. The 16th and the 17th were further to the east. They fought the British. They didn't really, they weren't on the continent peninsula. So I decided to convert my field battalions into your regular grenadier battalions. It's like the 3rd Battalion of the 1058th or something like that. And it wasn't hard. It was just painting over their blue uniforms with field gray. The camouflage smocks, they all stayed the same. But the Luftwaffe uniform, like the gray-blue uniforms, I just changed them into a field gray. And that's pretty much it. So they were squared away. They weren't hard to fix. Everything else is the same. The troop composition and everything else, the number of squads, the number of machine guns, all that's the same. Okay, so I also I worked on some roads. Basically, I made a video showing how to make roads, but that was kind of a dual purpose. I made these roads to see if I was wanting to use them or if the size was going to be right. And they are. I made some 2-inch wide roads and with a little bit of grass along the edges, and they lay perfectly flat. They have texture on them. They look great. I'm going to make a bunch of these for my personal O group battlefield so I can lay them down, but I'm also going to make a few extra for sale at my eBay store. Now I went through okay, we'll hold off on talking about the buildings here. Let's talk about the paratroopers. I have a bunch of paratroopers that I want to do next, right? Because I want to do the airborne operations using O group in Normandy. or Market Garden or Battle of the Bulge or wherever. But so I need to do some U.S. paratroopers, and I'm designing it just like a normal infantry battalion, just using paratroopers, because there's reasons why. Uh, even with the 12-man squads and having less squads, but also having a large command element, it still equates to having about 30 plus men in a platoon. So 3 bases to me works out to be a proper amount of firepower, a proper amount of hits that a unit can take. They have rules in O Group for paratroopers after August, so Market Garden and Battle of the Bulge, where they reduce the squads in a platoon or sections down to only 2 bases, but they increase the firepower per base. It equates to 6, just like a regular infantry with 3 base platoon, but it only gives them 2 bases. So you can wipe out a platoon by causing 2 wounds or 2 casualties, which I think gives the paratroopers, makes them a little bit like a glass cannon. And I don't think that should be the way. I think the paratroopers should have the same durability as any other infantry, but even better. So by making them more like a veteran unit, which gives them a lower morale value, which is a good thing. Like if I'm rolling 3 or better instead of 4 or better, then that means they can survive even longer. But I also think that they should be allowed to be forced to make morale choices. I don't think they should be immune to morale, because with the rules, it says after August, with the large squads and all that, they don't have to make a morale roll when they get down to 1 base. They ignore it, which implies that they never ever have to make a morale check, because you knock out 1 base, they have 1 base, they don't have to roll, then you knock out the 2nd base and the platoon's gone, right? So in effect, it gives them 2 wounds, no need for a morale check because they're eliminated, where a line infantry gets 2 wounds and a chance to be eliminated. So that makes them even more squishy than a line, and I don't think that's right. I think that's not right. So I plan to still play with them with 3 squads, just give them a higher morale and let it roll. Just let it roll. All right, so, but I can't do my paratroopers until my Forged in Battle order gets here, because as you have seen with my Grenadiers, I'm making combat patrols with figures on them, and all the support weapons, the anti-tank guns, the jeeps, the machine guns, the mortars, all of that requires figures, and I'm sitting at around approximately 130 figures that I need to do this battalion with all of its support elements and the combat patrols. and I was sitting on owning only about 100 models. And so I knew I needed to get about another 30 models. So I was considering the Flames of War Airborne, but Forged in Battle has such a good deal on their infantry that I had to get it. It was only 15 pounds. With shipping and everything, it came out to $25. That is way better than the than the Flames of War. Okay, because you get 40 models. All right, so now regular infantry has a machine gun platoon, and it has 2 medium machine guns, and with an option of a third, and a heavy machine gun. So you guarantee to get 2 mediums and 1 heavy, if you want to spend the points. But the 1 heavy should be like a 50 cal. And I don't have any 50 cal machine gun models. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of a conversion I'm going to take a 50 cal gun from one of my tank sprues, and that's going to give me a 50 cal machine gun, and then I'm going to have to put it on a tripod, and I have a bunch of 30 cal tripods. I think I might just cut the 30 cal machine gun off and glue a 50 cal machine gun on top of it, and then boom, I've got a 50 cal machine gun. So I think I'm going to do that. So yeah, I plan to, but then again, I'm going to have to double check. I'm not sure if the airborne machine gun platoons had 50 cals. I think they might have only had 30 cals. So, but I'm going to have to check the TO&E, and if not, then I won't have to worry about it. But I still think I might convert a machine gun into a 50 cal. Even if I have to use it in my regular, like glider-borne infantry or regular infantry. All right, so finally, this is what I've been struggling with. I've been sitting on top of a bunch of 10 millimeter buildings and 15 millimeter buildings. When I played Battle Group and I took it to a convention and we played, or if I played here in the store, we used Sarissa or TT Combat 15 millimeter buildings. They had removable second floors or removable roofs. You can put figures down inside the buildings. You could drop a Flames of War base inside. And it works really well for a man-to-man game, because that means the building and the men are the same scale, right? They work well with each other. But O Group is not a man-to-man game. It is a small Flames War base with 2 or 3 figures on it represents a squad or a section of like 10 to 12 men. Now I could, and in O Group, the buildings, they don't represent a building. They represent, or I should say, an area around the building represents what's called a built-up area, which can hold about a platoon and a half, a platoon plus support weapons. So it can hold about 6 bases, 5 to 6 bases. And, that's somewhere between 30 and 50 men. And you're not, that one building that you put on the built-up area doesn't represent that one building. Plus, it's not necessary to put people in the building to represent them being in the building, because that building is not a building. It's supposed to be a group of buildings. So I was struggling on whether or not to make built-up areas and then putting a 15mm building in the middle of it, and then putting the models around or in that 15mm building. It would be the right scale. It would be the right. It would physically, the one building and the one man would be the right scale to each other, but it just doesn't give the impression that it's a group of buildings. Now, I already had a bunch of 10mm buildings, and I was planning on using them for like other games to represent town sectors. So I could put 2 or 3 of these 10mm buildings on a template, and I could glue them down, and then on the edge of the template, either built into the base or put hedges or fences around the template. But either way, it's the template, or the board, the baseboard would be the built-up area, and then you could put figures in on that baseboard in between the buildings or whatever, and then you would know that they were occupying that neighborhood, right? That farm complex, or a portion of a village. And by having multiple buildings on this baseboard, you're making it obvious, or maybe you're making it subconsciously obvious, that it's not a building. It is a group of buildings. Now, what I plan to do is take these 10mm buildings, put them on this base, glue them down, and then put hedges or fences on the base, gluing them onto the base, and making a little courtyard, or a little what do they call it? A town square, or put some cobblestones on the base, or just make it dirt, or put a road through it or something, and basically make this square a little chunk of the city, right? And you put a bunch of those out, and it'll look like, hypothetically, let's say I put 2 buildings on every base, and I put like 4 bases out there. Well, you just now put down 8 buildings to represent that little village. And that is way better than just having 4 buildings that are gigantic, right? These 15mm buildings, because a lot of them are 2-story buildings, and they take up a lot of ground space, they look like they're 2 to 4 times bigger than the 10mm buildings. But when you put the 10mm building down, you put a 15mm base of figures, which is only 2 or 3 figures, next to it. It doesn't look bad. The doors are like, they only come up to like maybe their eyes or something like that. So their heads are just a little bit over the door, but it's not so drastic that it makes the building look like micro armor. A 10 or 12mm building, because I also have some N scale buildings, which I think are 12mm buildings, and these 10 and these 12s are very compatible with each other. If I started throwing 15mm buildings out there, they would just dwarf these other buildings. Maybe not the N scale buildings, but the 10 mil buildings, they would dwarf them. I put a tank next to some of these 10 mil buildings, and they still look pretty good. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. I've decided, without a shadow of a doubt, I'm going to do 10 mil. I'm going to put anywhere between 1, 2, or 3 buildings on a base. One, if it's like a church or a big building, like a manor house or something. But if it's a smaller house, like maybe a row house or something like that, I might put 2 side by side and give them a backyard or something like that. That's what I'm thinking. So it's going to be, some buildings are going to be just 1. Some buildings are going to be 2s, and very few, if any, are going to have 3. Majority of my buildings that I set up are going to be, the 2 buildings are going to be in opposite corners, and then the other 2 corners are going to have hedges or walls or fences. I want to put some either asphalt or cobblestone in the little courtyards, or just dirt. Dirt is fine if it's like supposed to be a farm complex. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. Now, when I build them, I have somewhere around 10 of these buildings already. Let me think. I probably have somewhere around 15 to 20 buildings already, and I'm getting in another 15 buildings from battle scale. So I'm going to have like 30 buildings. Now, that's not going to be 30 town sectors or 30 built-up areas, because remember, a lot of them are going to have 2 buildings. So it's going to be at least 15, maybe 20, maybe 25 built-up areas. And they'll all be different and stuff like that. So I plan to do a video showing off how I build these. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. And that's where I'm sitting with my O group update, waiting for the battle scale buildings to come in. I'm waiting for the forged in battle order to come in. I also have a command decision order in, which has some 75mm pack howitzers. I converted my field battalion to a grenadier battalion because it basically will make it more usable in on all areas. I do have the rules now. I already have the PDF. I will be working on roads and built-up areas, and maybe some more fields. Now, finally, I have a floor mat that I cut up a long time ago for my 28mm Napoleonic stuff. I'm planning on getting another floor mat, but this time with a 1/2-inch pile, and cutting it into a lot of different shapes, but almost all of them like 6-inch squares, right? And if it's 30 inches long, that's going to be, what, 5 squares long, and then 4 squares wide. So yeah. So that'll be good for crop fields. And then I'm also making the plowed fields, which it's really only for looks, because it'll be treated just like open ground, right? But it'll be like ground filler when I put them out there. All right, guys. Well, that's it. At least you got the update. Keep your attention to the channel, and I'll be putting out some videos when I do the painting of the paratroopers and the building of the built-up areas. All right, I'll catch you in the next one.